A massive fin slices through the choppy blue water, accompanied by a loud splash. It is a classic "we're going to need a bigger boat" moment, except there is no boat, just salt water and imminent doom. Clinging to a piece of floating wood, Chin Muen yells at a pink-haired girl to keep it together because the shore is supposedly close. Meanwhile, the girl is having a full-blown crisis. She wonders what she should even do, realizing her strength is basically at 0%. It is hard to stay motivated when you are essentially a human snack. As the ocean's local apex predator closes the distance, Chin Muen looks back, realizing their situation just went from bad to a literal horror movie. Sweat beads on his face as the gravity of the situation sinks in. He realizes that if things keep going this way, they are both going to die. It is a grim calculation, and his expression suggests he is about to make a very difficult executive decision. Chin Muen makes his move. The girl shrieks his name, demanding to know what he is doing as he lifts the piece of wood she was using to stay afloat. He remains cold, stating they simply have no other choice. It is the ultimate "it's not you, it's the shark" breakup. Desperation hits a new peak as the girl stutters his name, begging him not to leave her because she is not ready to die. Chin Muen looks back with a single glowing red eye, looking less like a savior and more like a guy who just checked his survival at any cost box. A massive shark breaches the surface right in front of them, cutting off the girl's sobbing plea. She barely gets out a final "don't" before the literal jaws of death arrive to join the conversation. Chin Muen literally clocked the great white shark in the face with the piece of wood. The shark lunges, and the plank they were relying on becomes toothpicks. Chin Muen is thrown into the chaos as the predator makes its move, shattering their only hope of staying afloat. The smack rattles shark as its face now bruised and bloodied. Chin Muen really said no to being a snack. Splash! The shark dives. The beast submerges with a dramatic fin splash like it's going to reset and come back even more evil, as sharks do. The pink-haired girl is sinking into the deep blue abyss, while the shark casually circles above her like it's checking the menu. The shark pulls up with its mouth fully open, teeth everywhere, blood dropping off the girl's head. This is not a vibe, this is a funeral. She's fading fast, bubbles escaping her lips, barely whispering, "Help me." She is literally glubbing her last words, and it's gutting. But wait, the shark smells fresher blood somewhere else and actually pieces out mid-attack like she just got downgraded from main course to afterthought. Chin Muen surfaces with his bleeding arm already wrapped up in a Y bandage, knife clenched between his teeth like he personally invented the concept of not dying. This man did not come to lose. He throws his head back and hails like he's about to hold his breath for the rest of his natural life because he literally is, and dives back into that shark's house on purpose. He straight down with the knife outstretched, the shark circling the girl below, and he basically waves his bleeding arm like, "Hey, over here," using himself as bait, unbothered. The shark locks onto him with a grrr and absolutely rockets toward him instead. Mission accomplished, girl safe. Chin Muen is now the main course and somehow okay with that. He holds his ground as the shark charges jaws first, screw deep. Bro is staring into a wall of teeth with the energy of someone who has nothing to lose. He times it perfectly, drives his fate into the shark's snout with a thunderous snap. Our boy really said, "I am the weapon," and proved it. Taking advantage of the shark's whiff, Chin Muen brings with a powerful swoosh. He drives his stake downward with everything he's got. He's not here for a casual swim. He's here to be the apex predator's worst nightmare. Blood clouds the water as the stake finds its mark. Chin Muen lets out a satisfied humph. Clearly unimpressed shark's attempt at a jump scare. He's got that main character energy turned up to 11, even while holding his breath. The shark doesn't take the stabbing well, thrash wildly in the blue void. It's a chaotic mess of fins and bubbles, but Chin Muen keeps his distance, watching the oversized goldfish lose it in the pain of the puncture. With the shark sufficiently distracted by its new piercing, Chin Muen kicks off. He swims with a focusity, leaving the bleeding beast behind in the dark water as he maneuvers through the rising bubbles. Deep below, the pink-haired girl is losing the battle with a faint escapes her as she sinks further into the blue, her consciousness slipping away while her body continues its slow descent into the dark. Glazed, and a soft drifts from her lips. She's drifting into the light at the end of the tunnel phase, her limbs heavy and unresponsive as the pressure begins to take its toll. In a final, desperate moment of clarity, she silently begs for someone to help her, pleading for any. It's the classic survival trope, but with significantly more drowning and a lot less hope. High above, Chin Muen stops his ascent. That's actually her down there, squinting through the murky water. It's the classic "did I leave the stove on" look, but for human lives and potential. Realization hits him like a truck. A silent shock registers on his face as he spots her sinking form, and he immediately shifts his momentum to dive back into the danger zone. Diving back down, he finally reaches her. He wraps his arms around, curing her as they float in the silent pressure of the deep. It's a moment that would be romantic if they weren't currently running out of oxygen and surrounded by predator blood. Final, powerful swoosh, Chin Muen kicks toward the surface. He's carrying the girl like a prize, determined to get them both. Air is free, and the sharks aren't invited to the party. On the warm sand, the pink-haired girl lies motionless. Her school uniform is soaked, and her hair against her face as she remains unresponsive to the tropical heat. Suddenly, life returns in the most unglamorous way possible. She coughs, purging the ocean from her lungs with a loud PFFT. It is not exactly a cinematic awakening, but it beats the of staying drowned. Her eyes flutter open, shimmering with tears and confusion. She groans that everything feels incredibly uncomfortable. A fair assessment of her current state. Then, she notices a presence hovering over her, causing her confusion to peak as she lets out a startled. Wen stares back with a completely blank expression, while his hands remain firmly planted on her chest in a textbook resuscitation. Realization hits the girl like a freight train. Her voice carries across the entire island as she shrieks the word pervert into the atmosphere, going high enough to startle the local wildlife. Now sitting up and looking like a ripe tomato, the girl crosses her arms defensively to cover herself. Salvage the situation by asking, with a stutter, if he was actually just performing CPR on her. She is clearly hoping for explanation to mask the massive awkwardness. Chin Muen does not do subtle. He confirms the CPR with a blunt yes, then decides to double. He also provided mouth to mouth. Naturally, she reacts with an indignant "hey," because some details are definitely better left unsaid. The obvious logic that they are both medical students, so saving lives is just part of the curriculum. A heavy air while she processes the fact that her life was saved by a guy she just labeled a creep. Eventually, she manages to mumble a quiet thanks. The tropical scenery, she asks the million-dollar question regarding where exactly they are. Chin Muen, busy staring at his phone, admittedly no idea. They have successfully traded a shark for a mystery island. As they stand on the shore with the wind, she wonders if their technology survived the swim. She asks if they can still use their phones, likely hoping for a GPS miracle, or at least a sick you. He delivers the bad news with the same deadpan energy he uses for everything else. He confirms that the phones work, but there is absolutely in this corner of paradise. It looks like their island adventure is just getting started, and there is no call for help button in sandy shore surrounded by tropical palms. The pink-haired girl demands that Chin Muen call the police immediately. She is clearly over the whole stranded on a deserted island vibe and wants a manager. Chin Muen, ever the realist, checks his device and reminds her for the umpteenth time that there is absolutely no. By his lack of tech savviness, she calls him stupid and explains her very confident, very wrong theory. According to her, the police are reachable even without a signal or a SIM card. It is a classic "I saw it on the internet" moment that is about to go horribly wrong because logic doesn't work that way in the wild. Determined to prove her point, she snatches the phone from his hand. With a confident flourish, she tells him to allow her to handle the situation. Chin Muen just stands there, looking slightly skeptical, but letting the self-appointed expert do her thing. The screen rescue interface, with captions indicating an emergency rescue attempt despite the lack of signal. She sends out a text for help into the digital void. The universe responds with a resounding silence. There is absolutely no reaction from the device. The pair stands in a daze as the reality of their isolation sinks in. A small sigh of defeat escapes into the tropical air, punctuating the awkwardness of her failed life hack. Refusing to accept that her tech tip failed, she forces a nervous smile and asks Chin Muen if his phone is simply broken. It is much easier to blame questionable logic. She is definitely the type to restart the router when the entire neighborhood has a power outage. High up in the fronds of a coconut tree, Chin Muen looks down with a mix of confusion and pity. He questions where on earth she learned such blatantly false information. The girl stands below, a single sweat drop highlighting her growing embarrassment as she realizes she might not be the genius she thought she was. Dropping some actual knowledge while perched among the leaves, he explains that calling the police without a SIM card is only possible if you are actually in an area with a signal. Nowhere. He reiterates the cold, hard truth. There is no signal here. Iconic survival skills meet basic telecommunications 101. Panic finally sets in as she looks up at him, her eyes wide with realization. She frantically asks what they are supposed to do and what kind of place they have ended up in. She reasons that if they are trying to get help, they first need to figure out their actual location. It is a solid plan. Shading his eyes from the sun, Chin Muen scans the horizon. He thinks to himself that on an island this massive, there simply must be someone else around. His focus is broken when she shouts a confused, "What?" from the ground, likely because he is ignoring her existential crisis to look at the view. From his vantage point, Chin Muen spots something that makes his blood run cold. He sharply tells her to be quiet, his voice cutting. She looks up, startled by his sudden intensity, her annoyance momentarily replaced by confusion. The girl isn't having it. She rants about him having the audacity to tell her to be quiet, especially after he literally tried to feed her to sharks earlier. She starts to ask, but Chin Muen isn't playing games. He leaps down and slams his hand over her mouth, demanding silence once more. The tension is thick enough to cut with a stake. Chin Muen leans in close, his expression deadly serious as he repeats the command to be quiet. He isn't being mean, he's being a survivor, and her shouting is basically a dinner bell for whatever is lurking in the jungle. His blue eyes narrow, scanning the tree line with predatory focus. Something is moving in the shadows, and it definitely isn't a friendly rescue party with snacks. The air feels heavy with an immediate, unseen threat that Chin Muen is tracking with pinpoint accuracy. A spear whistles through the air with a terrifying swoosh, narrowly missing them. Reacting with lightning speed, Chin Muen tackles her life. She lets out a scream. As they hit the dirt, the reality of their situation shifting from lost to hunted in a matter of seconds. A spear thuds into the sand with a sharp stab, skidding across the beach in a classic welcome to the island greeting that absolutely nobody asked for. The projectile narrowly misses its mark, burying itself in the dunes, while the sunny sky and fluffy clouds provide a deceptively peaceful murder. Chin Muen keeps the pink-haired girl pinned to the ground, his protective instincts kicking into high gear, while she likely wonders if this is a rescue or a surprise wrestling match. Staring at the primitive weapon that nearly turned them into a human kebab, he breathes out a confused question, wondering what on earth this is supposed to be. It is a fair question when a tropical vacation pivots into a survival horror scenario without any warning. A distinct rustle breaks the silence. The leaves are thick and jagged, providing the perfect hiding spot for whatever just threw a sharpened are deep enough to hide a whole squad of uninvited guests, and the lack of visibility is definitely not helping the vibe. Another rustle echoes from the brush, drawing the immediate attention of the stranded pair. Chin Muen and the girl stare toward the source of the noise, their backs to the beach as a white spark of realization pops above his head. It is that iconic moment where you realize the deserted island is actually who do not seem interested in sharing their snacks. With a final rustle and a sharp swish, the foliage parts to reveal not one, not two, but 3 unwelcome surprises. A wiry guy on the left with a staff and a tongue-out grin like this is genuinely fun for him. A stocky, silent type on the right, looking like he's never had a single thought that wasn't about violence, and front and center, the main attraction, a massive, muscular man with purple hair and a headband who looks like he has never missed a day at the jungle gym, sporting a bone necklace and a jagged primitive weapon, staring them down with eyes buried in shadow, while his boys flank him like this is a whole coordinated welcome party. It is officially welcome party. It is a fit signal strength and start worrying about staying alive. A roar erupts from the tree line as 3 aggressive men charge forward, their faces twisted in primal rage. These men have collectively decided that diplomacy is not on the menu today. Chin Muen clocks the situation, smiles like it's a Tuesday, and just says, "Hi," followed by, "There are indigenous people here?" Bro is genuinely curious while standing in the middle of a threat assessment. He drops into a fighting stance and actually tries, "Hello?" while the tribe charges at him, screaming. He's thinking he can ask for directions, and they're thinking lunch. Nobody is on the same page. The wiry one lunges with his spear screaming, and Chin Muen is confused, like he got a notification he wasn't expecting. Unbothered, does not even begin to cover it. The big tribal chief comes sprinting down the beach, roaring like a freight train while Chin Muen casually greets him in French. A close-up of the chief's face reveals glowing red eyes, deep battle scars, and the most committed murder expression ever drawn. This man woke up today specifically to ruin someone's afternoon. Now it's a full 2-on-1 situation, with both tribal warriors surging from different angles, screaming their war cries. Chin Muen stands in the middle like he's waiting for a bus, utterly calm. Dripping wet, hair plastered across his face, Chin Muen looks the tribesman dead in the eyes with the most unbothered expression imaginable, and basically asks him why he's so personally offended. Bro just washed up on this island 20 minutes ago and is already demanding an explanation for the hostility. The wiry tribesman hurls his spear in rapid succession, while Chin Muen weaves and dodges each one like they're mild inconveniences. Bro is basically doing a tutorial level, and the tribe doesn't even know it. The massive chief leaps into the air with a thunderous grunt while Chin Muen below him tracks the jump with ice-cold blue eyes and a spear raised. This is the moment before something very bad happens to someone very large. Chin Muen grabbed the spear shaft mid-air with a devastating crack. Just rewrote the terms of this fight entirely. Chin Muen catches the chief's weapon and smashes it back with the spear handle in a flash collision of brute force. The chief is absolutely not used to having his attacks turned against him, and the confusion is palpable. The chief's red eye widens in a split second of pure shock as a foot blurs toward his face. That single exclamation mark says everything his brain couldn't process in time. On his back, Chin Muen launches his sneaker directly into the chief's face with pinpoint precision while smirking. He yanks another warrior's weapon clean out of his grip and plants himself over him with total control. The power shift happens so fast the tribesman's brain is still buffering. Chin Muen drives his fist downward with zero hesitation, while the tribesman below him still hasn't accepted his fate. The audacity of still yelling mid-beat down is honestly kind of inspiring. The pink-haired girl watches the chaos unfold with wide, terrified eyes and screams a warning across the battlefield. She just survived a near-death shark encounter and is now having an equally traumatic time on land. The stocky little third tribesman, who had been suspiciously quiet this whole time, comes charging in with his weapon drawn and blood already flying. Nobody told him the fight was basically over, and that's going to be a painful lesson. Chin Muen stands in the center of the battlefield with one tribesman already face down in the dirt, surveying the two still standing, and calmly concludes that since they came out swinging with zero introduction, conversation was never really an option anyway. The wiry tribesman takes off running with a grin like he just thought of something clever, while Chin Muen clocks the new threat and his brain goes full alarm mode. The audacity of this man smiling during a beatdown. The pink-haired girl turns around to find the wiry tribesman charging toward her on the sand with deeply suspicions. She screams, asking what on earth he thinks he's doing, and honestly same, we all want to know. Before she can get an answer, a weapon connects with her back in a brutal hit, and she lets out the most anguished scream. She survived sharks, she survived the ocean, and now this is how her day goes. Unbelievable. She hits the ground hard, face first, barely conscious, and still managing to look devastated about it. This girl has been through absolutely everything in one chapter and deserves a very long nap. She pulls herself up coughing and wincing on the beach shore, battered, sandy, saltwater soaked, and somehow still functioning. The wiry tribesman looms over her from above with his spear pointed directly down at her head and a full murder smile. This is the worst position she has been in today, and that is truly saying something. Blood splattered everywhere as she manages to call out for Chin Muen with what little voice she has left, and at this point, after everything she has been through, the girl every single cry for help. Chin Muen hears it, face dark, jaw set, eyes hidden in shadow, and in one motion drives the wiry tribesman's own weapon upward through his chest, while the guy can only manage a confused, huh? The fight just shifted and nobody gave that man the memo. The pink-haired girl watches in absolute horror, face covered in blood, eyes blown wide, as the spear goes clean through the tribesman right next to her. She has officially seen more violence in one day than most people see in a lifetime, and her expression says every single word about it. A cold close-up of Chin Muen's sneaker pressing down with surgical precision, blood pooling around the spear tip on the sand. This man is not fighting anymore. He is making a statement. He stands over the defeated tribesman with one foot planted on his chest and the spear pinning him to the ground, staring down with the calmest face imaginable. The audacity of looking that composed after a 3-on-1 beach brawl is genuinely unhinged. Back turned, he grips the weapon in his bandaged hands and faces the jungle tree line. The tribal chief explodes back with red eyes blazing and a war cry that shakes the whole panel. This man just watched his entire crew get dismantled, and instead of retreating, he is somehow angrier and louder about it. Respect the commitment, fear the consequences. The chief charges at Qin Muwen with everything he has left, only to get a spear driven straight into his neck for his trouble. The chief picked the wrong day, the wrong island, and absolutely the wrong person. Qin Muwen stands over the chief, casually cracking his knuckles, while the man coughs up blood on the sand below him. The sheer nonchalance of announcing there is only one left while popping his fingers is the most cold-blooded thing. He crouches down and snatches up the chief's dropped blade from the ground with his bandaged hand, eyes hidden under his brow, red aura building behind him. This man is not done. He is just upgrading his loadout mid-fight. The lucky little tribesman comes sprinting back across the sand, screaming his war cry while the chief dies from spear through his neck. Qin Muwen stands in the middle of the battlefield, completely unbothered, like he already knows exactly how this ends. Our boy just absolutely launches himself off the ground and throws a massive scythe-like blade crashing down. The stocky tribesman blocks the scythe with his staff. This man went from aggressor to victim in approximately half a second, and his face is telling the whole story. A brutal mid-air clash, and the tribesman just gets absolutely cooked. Qin Muwen lands from his attack, and the tribesman crumples to the ground unconscious. A blonde girl throws the massive scythe blade at the fallen stocky tribesman. She absolutely not playing around. Qin Muwen stands calmly as the massive scythe makes impact directly on the stocky tribesman's head. The pink-haired girl is shaking, blood splattered on her face, eyes wide, hands clasped together, barely whispering. She has witnessed more things today than her entire sheltered life prepared her for, and the trembling aura lines say it all. She wipes blood off her face with the back of her hand, one eye peeking out with that look, not crying, not screaming, just quietly recalibrating. She's either traumatized or leveling up, possibly both. Qin Muwen is literally stroking his chin thinking, this brat probably got scared, and then immediately following it up with, but of course, how is it possible for a girl raised in a bubble to? She marches up to him and asks, are you actually Qin Muwen? And he hits her with, guaranteed replacement if fake. She's shook, and he's just built different. The girl's eyes turn into literal sparkling stars as she gasps, How come you're so amazing? She went from traumatized to completely fangirling in under 3 panel. She's rattling off the scoreboard, you just killed 3 people, and you killed a shark earlier, while Qin Muwen pulls the weapon out of one of the tribesmen's head. He turns to her calmly and says, I can testify. The girl adds that the reason he killed those 3 is self-defense. And she's pointing a finger like she's already prepared the closing argument. This girl is a lawyer, apparently. Qin Muwen's smile is doing a lot of work, and none of it is innocent. Something is being planned. Something is being enjoyed. We should probably be worried. She demands to know what he finds so funny, and he deflects with a question about whether she is scared. She crosses her arms, acknowledges she owes him her life, then hits him with the real question. How is a college student this capable? Because nothing about him adds up to a normal person. Qin Muwen drops the truth, admitting that he was in the military service before college. The reveal lands like a freight train, and suddenly every single thing about him makes perfect, terrifying sense. A shadowy older man sits behind a desk in a dimly lit office and hands Qin Muwen a new identity, a student cover at a traditional medicine university. This man is Yan Shushi, the father of Yan Yufei. The whole operation was planned. The mission is stated in the simplest, coldest possible terms. Protect her. This was never an accident. Qin Muwen holds the photograph and reflects on how the assignment went sideways before it even began. The yacht exploded before he ever made contact. He was already her guardian before she knew he existed. The game was rigged from day. A serrated blade bites into the stem of a coconut with a sharp cha sound. It is Island Survival 101, and Qin Muwen is putting in the work to secure some electrolytes. Perched high in the palm tree like an athletic squirrel, Qin Muwen pauses his harvest. Below him, the pink-haired girl points frantically toward the horizon. She yells up to him, convinced that she has spotted people out on the open sea. It is the classic beacon of hope, but in this world, hope usually comes with a side of danger. Squinting against the glare of the sun, Chin Muen spots a tiny speck bobbing on the blue expanse. A small white and blue lifeboat drifts aimlessly, confirming the girl's suspicions. It is a tiny target in a very large, very wet haystack, and the lack of oars moving suggests this is not exactly a luxury cruise. The pink-haired girl is ready to pull a full sprint toward the shoreline, shouting that these must be other survivors they need to greet immediately. She has that main character optimism that usually gets people eaten. Chin Muen, however, drops into a tactical crouch on the sand, warning her to stay back and avoid being rash. He knows that new friends often mean new problems. A sudden whoosh of movement cuts through the water as the perspective shifts to a bird's-eye view of the raft. It is not just a boat, it is a centerpiece for a very hungry audience. Dozens of sharks circle the tiny vessel, creating a ring of death in the crystal-clear water. Inside the raft, the vibe is absolute panic. A man in glasses and a blonde man in a floral shirt realize their vacation insurance does not cover being shark bait. The blonde guy mutters that they are absolutely cooked, while the woman beside them can barely finish her sentence about just how many predators are surrounding them. A loud splash nearby suggests the sharks are getting impatient for the main course. Back on land, the pink-haired girl's face loses all its color as she realizes the situation is a total nightmare. Her eyes go wide and she stammers out that the water is filled with a shiver of sharks. It is a great collective noun for a group of fish that are currently making everyone's skin crawl. While the girl is busy having a crisis, Chin Muen has a light bulb moment. He stands over a couple of very dead, very primitive-looking guys lying on the beach and mutters a quiet eureka. Most people see corpses and think tragedy, but Chin Muen sees a very specific, very fleshy solution to their shark problem. Grabbing one of the dead bodies by the legs, Chin Muen starts hauling it toward the surf. He tells the pink-haired girl not to move and to stand and wait for him right there, ignoring her frantic questions about where he is going and what on earth he is doing. Chin Muen wades deeper into the ocean, the weight of the deceased stranger trailing behind him. The water ripples with every splish and splash of his movement. He is heading straight toward the danger zone, using a human distraction to navigate the shark-infested waters. Beneath the surface, the view is even more terrifying. Massive sharks glide through the blue depths, their predatory eyes fixed on the movement above. Beads of sweat roll down Chin Muen's face as he keeps a wary eye on the fins cutting through the surface. He notes grimly that they are all coming for him now. The lifeboat is still a distance away, and he is currently the most interesting thing in the water, which is a terrible position to be in. Chin Muen maneuvers the body into position. He is floating in the deep blue now, the lifeboat visible in the distance, but his focus is entirely on the hungry mouths closing in. Channeling his inner soccer star, Chin Muen delivers a powerful kick to the corpse, sending it drifting away from him. He grunts out that here they go, offering the sharks a free meal in exchange for his own life. It is cold, it is calculated, and it is honestly an iconic move for someone trying to avoid becoming a snack. As the body creates a final splash and begins to draw the attention of the circling predators, Chin Muen wastes no time. He swims with everything he has in the opposite direction, leaving the sharks to fight over the distraction, while he makes his move toward the survivors. Talk about a chef's kiss level of survival instinct. Chin Muen stands in the waist-deep water, watching his bait plan succeed with clinical detachment. Blood clouds the water behind him as sharks tear into the first offering, proving his theory correct. He notes to himself that the plan worked perfectly, but he needs to fetch the second body immediately to keep the predators occupied. A sudden splash nearby catches his attention, prompting a confused hum as he turns to see an unexpected guest joining the cleanup crew. On the shoreline, the pink-haired girl is actually putting in the work, dragging a massive, muscular corpse through the surf with surprising determination. She shouts to Chin Muen that she is here to help him, her face strained with the effort of hauling dead weight across the sand. Watching her struggle with the body, Chin Muen realizes he definitely underestimated her grit. It turns out the school uniform aesthetic comes with a side of impressive body-hauling strength. Over on the lifeboat, the man with glasses and his blonde companion finally catch a break from the terror. The blonde guy wipes sweat from his brow with a relieved whistle, celebrating the fact that the sharks have finally cleared out. Their immediate death by apex predator has been officially postponed, which is a solid win for anyone's survival calendar. The man with glasses isn't about to let a good distraction go to waste. He grips his oar and barks orders at the blonde guy, telling him not to waste the precious opportunity provided by their rescuers. They need to paddle quickly while the sharks are busy with their buffet. The blonde guy snaps out of his daze with a startled realization, agreeing that they need to move before the menu changes. The water erupts in a violent spray as the sharks continue their feeding frenzy. Blood and foam fly into the air, punctuating the absolute urgency of the situation. From the boat, a voice screams for them to go faster, the sound of the oars hitting the water barely competing with the thrashing fins and the sound of tearing flesh. Back on the solid ground of the island, several green coconuts lie scattered in the sand near the base of a thick palm tree. Heavy breathing resonates through the air, the sharp, ragged exhales from the two rescuers who have just finished an exhausting, life-or-death physical labor. The price of survival is apparently paid in cardio and sweat. The group finally gathers on the beach, the immediate danger of the sea behind them. The pink-haired girl kneels beside the brown-haired woman, asking the counselor if she is okay. The counselor, clutching her chest and looking completely drained, offers a breathless thank you to Chin Muen and Yan Min. It seems the rescue mission was a success, even if it involved a few too many corpses for a standard school trip. The counselor rests a hand over her heart, her breathing still shallow and uneven. She admits that it is all thanks to their bravery that the group survived, trailing off as she considers the grim alternative. If not for the distraction, they would be nothing more than shark snacks by now. The pink-haired girl, who we now know is Yan Min, has her eyes widen as she looks at the survivors, the adrenaline finally fading to make room for a chilling realization. She asks where the rest of the teachers and students are, her voice filled with a sudden, sharp concern. The math isn't adding up, and the missing numbers are starting to look like a tragedy. The counselor's face falls, her eyes dropping to the sand as she fails to find a comforting answer. A pained groan escapes her as the weight of the situation settles in. Her expression says everything, and none of it is good news for the school's graduation rate. A grim memory of the night before surfaces, painting a picture of total disaster. The massive cruise ship tilts dangerously in the dark water, flames erupting from its upper decks and lighting up the night sky like a funeral pyre. The counselor explains that the situation was pure chaos, and only a small portion of the crew managed to reach the lifeboats before the ship began its final descent. The flashback intensifies, showing the panic on the burning decks. Students run through the corridor filled with embers, shouting about the lack of lifeboats and the fact that they only have 3 people left in their group. Another survivor screams that the fire has already spread to their escape route, cutting off any hope of a standard evacuation. In the distance, a desperate plea for a doctor rings out, a man begging for help because his wife is badly injured in the carnage. The counselor and the 2 men had sailed for half a night. They were hit by massive waves that threatened to swallow them whole. By the time the ocean calmed, only 3 of them had managed to cling to the small raft, leaving the rest of their world to the deep. Yan Min stands frozen, her expression a mix of pure shock and confusion as she tries to process how any of this is even possible. Before she can find her voice, a familiar face lights up with recognition. A young man nearby exclaims that it really is her, admitting he never imagined cross paths in a nightmare scenario like this. The blonde survivor, looking remarkably composed despite the shipwreck, introduces himself as Hu Qingfeng. He recalls their time together in a nutrition course and offers a heartfelt thank you to Yan Min for her role in saving his life. Yan Min isn't interested in playing the hero today and immediately redirects the praise. Gesturing toward the stoic, shirtless young man standing behind her, she tells Hu Qingfeng that he should thank Chin Muen instead, insisting she only provided a bit of help to the guy who did the heavy lifting. Taking the suggestion to heart, Hu Qingfeng turns his attention to Chin Muen and introduces himself once more, and thanking him for the rescue. A firm handshake seals the introduction as Chin Muen offers a short, no-nonsense response, telling the man he's welcome. The friendly atmosphere hits a speed bump when Hu Qingfeng mentions seeing Chin throw something into the surf to lure the sharks away. He starts to connect the dots on what exactly was used as bait, leaning in with a nervous sweat breaking across his brow. Hu Qingfeng asks the question everyone is thinking, but too afraid to say. He tentatively asks if the object Chin tossed to the predators was actually a human. The man with glasses and the counselor look like they've seen a ghost, their faces contorting with horror. The mere suggestion of using a person as shark food sends them into a panic, with the man with glasses questioning what kind of hellish situation they've found themselves in. Chin Muen remains completely unfazed, casually pulling his black t-shirt back over his muscular frame. He clarifies the situation with chilling indifference, stating that the bait was simply the corpse of one of the natives. The group's collective jaw hits the sand. A chorus of disbelief erupts as they demand to know if he killed people just to distract the sharks. The realization that they aren't alone on this island hits them like a tidal wave, and they struggle to wrap their heads around the fact that the place is actually inhabited. With a cold, calculating look, Chin Muen drops some brutal logic on his fellow survivors. He explains that in his view, it is far better to feed the sharks with the dead than to let them feast on the living. It's a grim efficiency that leaves no room for sentimentality. Standing on the beach near their small lifeboat, the counselor mutters about how terrifying the situation has become, her eyes darting toward the dense tree line where more natives might be lurking. Yeonmin loses her patience with Chin's cryptic nature, snapping that it wouldn't kill him to actually explain the situation clearly for once. She then rounds on the rest of the group, telling them to stop listening to the nonsense. She defends Chin's actions, explaining that the barbarians were the ones who attacked first, and that Chin Muen was only defending them. Despite the self-defense argument, the mood remains sour. Hu Qingfeng points out that regardless of the reason, Chin still technically killed someone. Fearing the man who just saved them, he suggests they take drastic measures against Chin for the sake of everyone's safety. Hu Qingfeng is having a total meltdown. He insists the group needs to restrain Chin Muen immediately. Keeping him under constant surveillance is the only way he would feel safe. Pointing a shaky finger at Chin Muen, Hu Qingfeng doubles down on the paranoia. He demands that the guy be tied up tight whenever the rest of them are catching some sleep. Meanwhile, Chin Muen stands in the background, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else, offering nothing but a silent, judging stare. Attempting to be the main character, Hu Qingfeng leans into Yang Min's personal space with a smug grin, promising that he will be the one to protect her. Yang Min isn't buying the hero act for a second, crossing her arms and snapping back that she absolutely does not need his protection. Yang Min's patience has officially left the building. Her eyes flare with irritation as she grills Hu Qingfeng on his logic, reminding him that if Chin Muen hadn't just saved him, he would already be nothing more than a light snack for the local sharks. Hu Qingfeng isn't backing down, throwing his hands up like he's presenting a closing argument in a courtroom drama. He points out the undeniable reality that people are dead by Chin Muen's hand and asks the group if they're really not scared of being together with a murderer. The vibe shifts instantly as Chin Muen's gaze sharpens. He decides to cut through the theatrics, stating that the situation really doesn't need to be this complicated. Looming over the smaller man like a physical manifestation of a bad omen, Chin Muen suggests a simple solution. If the island is too dangerous, he is more than happy to toss Hu Qingfeng back out onto the sea. Terrified, Hu Qingfeng recoils, stammering out a plea for him not to come any closer. Yang Min has had enough of the nonsense. She barks at Hu Qingfeng to shut his mouth, telling him that if he didn't see what happened, he should stop talking absolute bullshit. Stepping up as Chin Muen's unofficial defense attorney, Yang Min reiterates that the guy acted purely in self-defense. She explains that because the others were actively trying to kill them, Chin Muen had no choice but to kill them first. The counselor steps in to play peacemaker, agreeing with Yang Min's assessment. She reminds everyone that classmate Chin Muen is the reason they're still breathing and suggests that, as classmates, they should have more trust in each other. Hu Qingfeng just stands there, looking like he swallowed a lemon. Hu Qingfeng just stands there, bitter, and lets out a silent scoff. He is clearly not convinced, but the social pressure of the group is starting to weigh him down. Switching gears with the grace of a failing transmission, Hu Qingfeng plasters on a fake eye-closing smile. He suddenly agrees with the counselor, claiming he was just worrying too much earlier and asking classmate Chin not to take his words to heart. Still trying to save face, Hu Qingfeng tells Yang Min he was only acting out of concern for her because she is a girl and being with someone unreliable is dangerous. Yang Min shuts that narrative down immediately, declaring that the most reliable person right now is Chin Muen. A strategic cough breaks the tension. The man in a dark jacket and glasses adjusts his spectacles, clearing his throat to finally introduce himself to the surviving cast of this tropical nightmare. Meet Lee Smarty, a 31-year-old supervisor from a construction group headquarters who apparently thinks his corporate title carries weight on a deserted island. After the formal intro, he pivots to the big question, asking the group what they should do next. Chin Muen stares with intense, focused eyes, giving Mr. Lee the floor to speak his mind. It is the classic look of a man who values brevity over politeness, silently urging the older man to get to the point. Lee Smarty points out that since rescue isn't exactly on a fixed schedule, they need to prioritize. Their immediate goal involves figuring out the island's layout so they can track down food and water sources later. Standing against the backdrop of tropical greenery, Lee suggests a little jungle trek is in order. He thinks they should scout the area for other survivors and maybe find a way off this rock, finally asking the group what they think of his plan. The ladies immediately turn to the man of the hour for a final decision. Yang Min asks Muen for his take on the situation, while Yan Min isn't even pretending to be undecided, declaring she will follow Chin Muen's lead no matter what. It is a total vote of confidence for the protagonist. Chin Muen's internal gears are turning as he weighs the risks. He knows the coast is a dead end for long-term survival since food and water are basically non-existent there. While the jungle is a gamble filled with danger, it also presents the only real opportunities they have. Plus, there is the mystery of the savages of unknown origin. They likely have to head in to figure out who they are dealing with. Despite the logic of moving forward, Muen drops a sudden reality check. He does not recommend charging into the trees immediately because the danger level is simply too high for a blind run. To drive the point home, Muen crosses his arms in a hard "no" gesture. Yan Min watches him closely, her expression shifting as she processes his sudden refusal to move. The counselor Miss Sun backs him up, telling Mr. Lee that Muen has the right idea. She warns that a rash entry is just asking for a face-to-face encounter with wild beasts or the island's natives at any moment. Lee Smarty isn't buying the fear factor and looks down at the group with a dismissive air. He tells Miss Sun she is overthinking the whole thing. In his opinion, the island is too small to host any massive predators, and as for the natives, he has a different theory. He flashes a confident, almost smug smile, arguing that even with a language barrier, a little friendliness goes a long way. He believes they can still communicate with the locals as long as they act friendly. Hu Qingfeng chimes in with some top-tier overconfidence, looking entirely too relaxed. He figures natives are generally naive and probably can't be that bad. It is the kind of logic that usually serves as a famous last word. Yan Min has officially lost her patience with the blonde's attitude. She snaps at him, pointing a finger and shouting that she already told him off. Her face is a mask of pure irritation as she tries to shut him down. Chin Muen tries to play peacemaker, or perhaps he is just tired of the constant bickering. He asks if they can't just let the whole thing go, leaving Yan Min looking a bit stunned by his sudden intervention. The mood shifts instantly as a hand grips a wicked-looking blade wrapped in cloth. A cold, dark realization settles in. Killing one person is still killing, and killing two doesn't change the definition. Suddenly, Chin Muen becomes the stuff of nightmares, his eyes glowing a predatory blue as he looms over a sweating Hu Qingfeng with a machete. He casually suggests that if 1 or 2 is killing, then 3, 4, 5, or 6 shouldn't make a difference, asking if the other man agrees. A terrified Hu can only stammer out a plea, asking what on earth Muen is trying to do as the blade hangs in the air. Chin Muen swings his makeshift weapon with a sharp grunt as he looks intense, like he is about to end a man's whole career. Panic hits the beach as Miss Sun begs Muen to stop his rampage before things go too far. Hu Qingfeng is having a total meltdown, screaming for help while shielding his face from the impending doom. It is peak drama for a Tuesday, with the blonde man convinced that his life is about to be cut short. A sharp crack rings, punctuating the violence of the moment. Hu Qingfeng lets out a high-pitched wail of pure agony, his imagination clearly doing more damage than the actual strike. The impact is heavy, sending white specks flying everywhere like a low-budget special effect in a high-stakes survival movie. Hu Qingfeng is a sweaty, trembling mess on the sand, his eyes wide with the realization that he is still breathing. A loud crack sounds as he tries to finish his plea for help, only to realize the violence was directed at a very unfortunate coconut. The fruit lies split open on the ground, spilling its contents while the blonde man continues to vibrate with pure terror. Chin Muen plays the role of the ultimate survivalist host, kneeling casually while holding half a coconut. He politely suggests that the counselor should drink some coconut juice first, leaving the man completely baffled by the sudden shift in tone. In the background, Hu Qingfeng remains a sobbing wreck on the sand, looking like he has seen a ghost, while the pink-haired girl watches the bizarre scene unfold. Flashing a surprisingly chill smile, Chin Muen holds out his bone-handled blade to the man with glasses. He asks if the guy wants to give the coconut slaying a try, acting as if he didn't just give everyone a heart attack. Lee Smarty takes a second to process the whiplash from murderous threat to tropical snack time before agreeing that it seems like a solid plan. Lee Smarty gets to work, squatting down to deliver a solid crack to another green coconut. Even while playing chef, he remains the voice of reason for the group, pointing out that staying on this beach forever isn't exactly a winning strategy. He knows that while the juice is great, it won't solve their long-term problems. The man with glasses continues his grim TED Talk, noting the distinct lack of sustainable food and water on the shore. He argues that even with a mountain of coconuts, they won't last long in this environment. Chin Muen stands nearby with his hands in his pockets, looking like a brooding model while he listens to the harsh reality of their survival situation. A sudden realization hits Chin Muen as he utters a soft, "Oh, right," remembering a crucial detail. A rustle comes from his pocket as he fishes around for something important, his expression shifting from bored to focused. He has been holding on to a piece of evidence that might just change their perspective on the island's inhabitants. He holds up a primitive necklace featuring a sharp, curved trophy that catches the light. Chin Muen explains that he found this on one of the island natives and is pretty certain the centerpiece is a wolf fang. It is a great way to tell the group that the local wildlife isn't interested in belly rubs and that they are definitely not alone. Lee Smarty stares at the fang, stroking his chin like a true intellectual. He admits that while wolves are a problem, they can't just sit around and do nothing. He brings up the Pearl Cruise, refusing to believe they are the only survivors and suggesting it is very possible others drifted to the same shore. Lee Smarty clarifies that entering the jungle isn't just a grocery run for water and sources. It is also a search mission. Finding other survivors is just as important as finding their next meal if they want to get off this rock. Chin Muen clutches the wolf fang necklace as he weighs his options. He thinks to himself that if he were solo, he wouldn't mind entering the jungle to investigate every inch of the place. However, he knows that being blindly constrained to the beach isn't a viable long-term solution for a group of this size. Turning to the survivors, Chin Muen lays down the law. They can enter the jungle, but they aren't going on a deep-dive suicide mission. He insists they need to proceed gradually and explore slowly to avoid any nasty surprises. Lee Smarty is all in, enthusiastically agreeing to the plan as the pink-haired girl and Miss Sun look on, ready to follow their new leader into the trees. The jungle isn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for our stranded survivors. A sharp rustle cuts through the humid air, sending Hu Qingfeng into a state of high alert. He stands frozen among the oversized ferns, his floral shirt clashing violently with the actual flora as he scans the shadows for whatever just moved. Leading the pack like he's born for this, Chin Muen grips a makeshift spear, his eyes scanning the dense greenery for threats. Behind him, the rest of the squad, Lee Smarty, Miss Sun, and Yan Min, trudge through the undergrowth. Lee Smarty decides now is the perfect time for a botanical field trip. Pointing a finger at the surrounding greenery, he identifies a Chinese fan palm before gesturing toward another tree to confirm it is indeed a palm tree. It's nice to have a human Wikipedia around when you're lost in a tropical death trap, even if the timing feels a bit like a mid-season filler episode. Miss Sun is clearly impressed by the impromptu science lesson, telling Mr. Lee that he is incredibly knowledgeable. Lee plays it cool though, brushing off the compliment by claiming these are just very common plants he recognized from his old camping days. Modesty is a great look, even when you're potentially stranded forever on an island that definitely didn't show up on the travel brochure. Suddenly, a white blur cuts through the air with a distinct whoosh, startling the group. A wild rabbit leaps across the path, leaving Lee Smarty blinking in confusion as he utters a startled, "Huh." It's the first sign of life that isn't a person or a plant, and it's moving way faster than their morale. Seeing dinner on the move, Lee Smarty points frantically into the brush, shouting that it's a wild rabbit and urging everyone to go after it. He's ready to turn this into a high-stakes hunt, his arm extended like he's directing a low-budget action movie. Apparently the survival instinct has finally kicked in, and it's telling him that rabbit stew is back on the menu. Before anyone can pull a hamstring chasing a rodent, Chin Muen throws an arm out to stop Yan Min in her tracks. He tells the group to save their strength because they won't be able to catch it anyway. Yan Min looks up at him, letting out a confused as her momentum comes to a grinding halt. It's a classic listen to the protagonist moment that probably saves them from running headfirst into a tree. Chin Muen explains the harsh reality of jungle physics, noting that there are too many obstacles and even he isn't sure he could catch the rabbit in this mess. He warns them that the vegetation is so dense it's easy to get lost, so they need to stick close to him. Yan Min can only offer a stunned okay as the sound of rustling leaves fills the silence. It's a sobering reminder that the island is the one in charge here. The brief moment of survival advice is shattered when they hear a sharp scream. Chin Muen doesn't hesitate, spinning around with a look of intense focus. He's not the type to wait for a monster to finish its introduction. Sweat beads on his forehead as he stares into the green abyss, his body tensed and ready to face whatever just made Yan Min lose her cool. The peaceful Yan Min stands in the lush, blue-tinted jungle, her orange eyes wide as the silence of the forest breaks. She identifies the voices immediately, realizing that Counselor and Hu Qingfeng are currently shouting somewhere nearby. The urgency in their voices cuts through the humid air, making her skin prickle with sudden alarm as she tries to locate the source of the commotion. Panicking, Yan Min points toward the noise, insisting that their friends might be in serious danger. She begs Qin Muen to hurry so they can provide help, but he remains iconically stoic. Without even turning his head, he shuts down the rescue mission with a cold dismissal, stating there is absolutely no need to move. The rejection leaves Yan Min completely stunned. Her mouth hangs open as she lets out a confused sound, unable to process why he would just stand there while their comrades are clearly in trouble. The sweat on her face highlights the rising tension as she stares at him in disbelief, waiting for an explanation that makes sense. Qin Muen explains his lack of movement by pointing out that the others are already coming toward them. Heavy thuds vibrate through the ground, punctuated by rhythmic thumping sounds that suggest something large and fast is approaching. A blurred leg crashes through the thick ferns, confirming that the piece of the jungle is officially over. Hu Qingfeng bursts through the foliage, his blonde hair messy and his floral shirt damp with sweat. His face is a mask of pure terror as he screams for everyone to run. He isn't just jogging, he's sprinting for his life. Following close behind, Li Smarty takes the lead, gesturing wildly for the group to follow him. Behind him, Yang Min struggles to maintain the pace, her hand reaching out as she pleads for them to wait for her. The heavy thumping sounds grow louder and more frequent, signaling that whatever is chasing them is gaining ground fast. Qin Muen finally springs into action, gripping his staff and barking orders to run toward the shore. He looks ready for a fight, but Yan Min is still trying to wrap her head around the chaos. She frantically asks what is happening, her voice lost in the sounds of crashing brush and heavy breathing. Attempting to protest, Yan Min starts to say something, but the sheer momentum of the situation cuts her off. Qin Muen is already moving, his focus entirely on the path ahead. The vibrant green leaves blur past them as the group realizes that standing still is a one-way ticket to disaster. The counselor is absolutely gassed, her chest heaving as she lets out ragged gasps for air. Every step looks like a struggle for her as she tries to keep up with the men. The blue cardigan she wears flutters in the wind, a stark contrast to the dark, dangerous shadows of the jungle pressing in around her. Disaster strikes in the form of a stray tree root. The counselor's foot catches on the thick, gnarled wood, triggering a sudden loss of balance. The sharp sound of the trip rings out through the clearing, a sound that usually precedes a very bad time in these types of stories. Gravity takes over as the counselor tumbles forward with a sharp cry of pain. She hits the dirt hard, the impact sending a dull sound through the forest floor. The foliage swallows her lower half as she goes down, leaving her vulnerable and trailing behind the rest of the fleeing group. Yan Min looks back and sees the disaster unfolding, her face contorting in horror. She screams out that the counselor has fallen, desperately calling for Qin Muen to stop. The realization that they are about to leave someone behind hits her like a physical blow, forcing her to halt her own escape. Fear takes over as Yan Min's pupils dilate, her face drenched in cold sweat. She manages to choke out that they need to do something, but the words die in her throat. The terror of the moment is written across her features as she stares at the approaching threat. The source of the noise finally reveals itself as a massive, hairy beast. A wild boar charges through the undergrowth, letting out oinks as its hooves tap rhythmically against the earth. It's a literal tank of meat and anger, heading straight for the spot where Yang Min is currently pinned to the ground. The beast looms large, its eyes glowing with a menacing red light that screams boss fight. Sharp white tusks protrude from its snout, and its coarse fur bristles with every aggressive grunt. This isn't just a pig, it's a nightmare with a snout, and it looks absolutely ready to turn the cast into a kebab. Yan Min stands frozen, her hand flying to her mouth in a classic pose of pure dread. She breathlessly points out that the massive red-eyed beast is indeed a wild boar. Qin Muen is already in motion, his focus sharp as the reality of their situation sinks in. It's not exactly the nature hike they signed up for, especially when the local wildlife looks like it eats iron for breakfast. Li Smarty isn't waiting around for a closer look. He glances over his shoulder, eyes wide behind his glasses, sweating bullets as the sheer scale of the threat becomes clear. The dense jungle foliage offers no comfort, only shadows for the beast to charge through. Chin Muen prioritizes the group's safety over his own dignity. He bellows for the others to keep running and absolutely do not turn back. He runs towards the boar while the others flee. It's a classic hero move, though usually the hero has a better plan. Hu Qingfeng isn't about to leave his favorite teammate behind. He reaches out a hand toward Yan Min, his voice cracking as he calls her name. The lush greenery of the forest closes in around them, making every step feel like a desperate race against a very hairy, very angry clock. Hu Qingfeng tries to play the knight in shining armor, flashing a smile that's probably meant to be reassuring. He tells Yan Min not to be afraid because he's going to bring her out of this mess personally. Yan Min isn't buying the hero act though. She shuts him down immediately, declaring there's no need for his help because she's heading back to assist Chin Muen. Talk about a brutal rejection in the middle of a monster chase. The rejection hits Hu Qingfeng harder than a charging tusk. His face twists into a grotesque mask of jealousy, his eyes glowing with a petty purple rage. He seethes internally about Chin Muen, frustrated that it's always that guy getting the attention. If looks could kill, Chin Muen would be flatter than a pancake, but for now, Hu Qingfeng just looks like he's having a very bad day. Back in the danger zone, Chin Muen lunges toward the fallen counselor. He screams out for her as the wild boar looms in the foreground, its tusks gleaming with malicious intent. Yang Min looks up from the grass, her eyes wide with terror as she realizes Chin Muen is actually coming back for her. It's a high-stakes rescue mission with zero room for error. Reaching out a trembling hand, Yang Min looks up with a glimmer of hope. She starts to offer a breathless thanks, her face softening as she sees a hand descending to pull her from the dirt. A firm hand clamps onto Yang Min's arm with a sudden grab. The romantic atmosphere evaporates instantly as her expression shifts from gratitude to pure confusion. She stammers out a question, wondering what on earth is happening as she's suddenly being handled like a sack of potatoes rather than a damsel in distress. Chin Muen doesn't have time for a gentle lift. He executes a full-on Saiyu style spin, hurling the counselor through the air like he's trying for a gold medal in the hammer throw. Yang Min lets out a startled "Why?" as she flies across the clearing. It's not the most graceful rescue, but hey, flying is faster than running when a boar is on your heels. Yan Min catches the airborne counselor, the two of them tumbling together in a heap of school uniforms and panic. Hu Qingfeng hovers nearby, frantically asking if she's okay while Yan Min cries out for the counselor. It's a chaotic pileup of survivors, all while Chin Muen stands as the only thing between them and a very messy end. Chin Muen doesn't stick around to check for bruises. He barks an order for everyone to run to the beach immediately. Yan Min doesn't argue, shouting back a quick confirmation as she grabs the counselor's hand. They're moving with a purpose now, fueled by the kind of adrenaline you only get when a prehistoric nightmare is breathing down your neck. Just as he thinks he's clear, a sharp PAF echoes through the trees. Chin Muen's head snaps back in confusion, an involuntary "A" escaping his lips. Something has struck him from behind, and judging by the way his shirt is torn, it wasn't a friendly pat on the back. The situation just went from bad to, how is this my life right now? The source of the noise becomes terrifyingly clear as a massive shadow falls over Chin Muen. A heavy thump-thump vibrates through the ground, signaling the arrival of the boar right in front of him. He looks like a literal ant compared to the dark, hairy mass of the beast looming over his shoulder. This is the part of the movie where the music gets really loud and everyone starts screaming. The boar lets out a deafening oink, its red eyes locked onto its target. It's a blur of dark fur and murderous intent as it closes the distance. Chin Muen grits his teeth, his face strained as he prepares for the impact. It's officially man versus beast, and the beast looks like it's been hitting the gym. Sweat beads roll down Chin Muen's face as the gravity of the situation hits him harder than a surprise exam. His eyes are wide, fixed on the threat, and he can't help but curse under his breath because, honestly, what else do you say when a giant pig wants to turn you into a human kebab? Launching into the air like a budget acrobat, Chin Muen lets out a startled cry while the world turns upside down. The massive boar charges directly beneath him, leading to a bone-rattling crash as the environment takes the full brunt of the beast's momentum. While he is busy defying gravity, he screams at the others to run for their lives. Yan Min looks back in pure terror, her voice trembling as she calls out Chin Muen's name, watching the boy who just saved her life become a human projectile in the middle of a forest. Gravity finally remembers its job, pulling him down before he hits the dirt with a heavy thud. He sticks the landing, but not in the Olympic gold kind of way, more in the "my ribs are definitely vibrating" kind of way. Clutching his chest where blood starts to seep through his shirt, Chin Muen lets out a pained "Ouf!" From the safety of the dense foliage, he urgently tells the girls to hide and not make a single sound. Yeonmin can barely keep it together, whispering that Chin Muen is hurt, her eyes fixed on the fresh blood staining his clothes. The wild boar isn't exactly a master of stealth, letting out a loud, aggressive oink that echoes through the trees. Its red eyes scan for anything that moves, and it looks like it hasn't had breakfast yet. Yeonmin's face is in shock as she covers her mouth, trying to keep her breathing quiet. She stares at the beast with the kind of wide-eyed horror usually reserved for realizing you left the oven on. The massive, hairy back of the boar looms over the girls. They are frozen in the greenery, looking like two very small snacks in the face of a very large, very angry problem. Chin Muen grits his teeth, calculating the odds like a math teacher on a mission. He realizes this wild boar is at least around 300 pounds, making a head-on fight straight-up suicide, but he refuses to just sit there and watch this happen. Cursing again because the situation is still very much shit, he kicks off the ground. A dash of speed sends him flying forward, his foot blurring as he chooses heroism over common sense. The boar lets out a triple threat of oink as it charges toward its target. Yeonmin loses her battle with silence, letting out a piercing scream as the red-eyed nightmare closes the distance. Chin Muen intercepts the charge, letting out a guttural ooh-ah as he throws his entire body weight into the beast. It is a classic tackle, though usually the opponent isn't a literal tank with fur. The impact is a messy blur of limbs and bristles, forcing a HMPF out of Chin Muen as he absorbs the blow. Finally, momentum wins out, and Chin Muen goes into a series of rolls across the forest floor. He tumbles through the grass like a discarded soda can, hoping that when he stops, he is still in one piece. The forest canopy rustles as the dust settles on a very one-sided fight. Chin Muen is currently cosplaying as a decorative rug, sprawled out on the forest floor after his big hero moment went south. The wild boar isn't exactly in peak condition either, letting out a heavy huff as it recovers its breath and stares down its prey. From the sidelines, Yeonmin watches the scene with a look that says she'd really like to be anywhere else right now. A close-up reveals that Chin Muen's internal organs are currently staging a protest. He hacks out a wet cough, painting the grass with a bit of his own blood. It's a classic I'm hurt but still brooding look, though the pained ouch he lets out suggests he's not quite ready to jump back into the action. Being a human shield is a tough gig, and the benefits package clearly leaves a lot to be desired. The boar decides that the silence is boring and breaks it with a series of aggressive oinks. This isn't the cute farmyard variety. This is the I'm going to turn you into a pancake variety. The ground starts to shake with a heavy thump as the beast prepares to finish the job. Chin Muen is slumped against a tree, looking like he's reconsidering every life choice that led him to this specific forest. Finally, the peanut gallery weighs in with some high-decibel encouragement. Yeonmin screams at him to watch out, her face a masterpiece of pure terror. Miss Sun joins the chorus, frantically yelling for Chin Muen to dodge the incoming mountain of ham. It's top-tier advice really, though not getting hit is usually easier said than done when your body is currently screaming for a long. The massive, furry nightmare with tusks lets out a deafening roar that probably shakes the very leaves off the trees. Chin Muen is currently reconsidering all his life choices while lying on the forest floor. Chin Muen sidesteps the wild boar's charge at the last second, and the animal slams headfirst into a tree instead. The wild boar is currently experiencing a technical error. With literal spirals for eyes and a cartoonish bump rising from its forehead, the beast looks less like a predator and more like a mascot for a concussion awareness campaign. Despite the successful counterattack, Chin Muen isn't exactly winning the not bleeding contest. He clutches his jaw, letting out a pained grunt as blood trickles from his mouth. His eyes are sharp, but the sweat beading on his forehead suggests that fighting a tank with fur is significantly harder than it looks in the movies. From behind a conveniently placed tree, Yeonmin and the counselor watch the carnage with wide-eyed terror. Yeonmin calls out to check if Chin Muen is still in one piece, but he's not in the mood for a status update. He clicks his tongue in annoyance, harshly whispering for them to shut up before they attract even more unwanted attention from the local wildlife. Looking down at his torso, Chin Muen finds a jagged gash that is definitely not supposed to be there. He grips his bone-handled blade, realizing that if this fight drags on any longer, he's going to end up as either a corpse or a permanent resident of the local infirmary. He needs a finisher, and he needs it 5 minutes ago. Enter Hu Qingfeng, the guy who clearly didn't get the memo about teamwork. Hiding in the tall grass like a budget version of a jungle predator, he scowls at the scene. He's genuinely annoyed that the boar failed to finish the job, wondering how on earth Qin Muen is still breathing after taking a hit like that. We get a sudden dive into Hu Qingfeng's tragic backstory. And by tragic, I mean he was just too shy to talk to girls. He reflects on his school days, admitting to himself that back then, he never had the guts to actually confess his feelings. It's a classic case of nice guy syndrome, but with more tropical humidity and less social grace. Hu Qingfeng's obsession goes deep. He recalls taking the same elective classes just to stare at the back of Yang Min's head like a total creep. Now that they've all ended up stranded on a deserted island, he views this life-or-death survival situation as the ultimate meet-cute opportunity, because nothing says romance like being shipwrecked and hunted by monsters. Hu Qingfeng decides that if Qin Muen, who he lovingly refers to as a meddling bastard, would just hurry up and die, Yang Min would be forced to rely on him. He convinces himself that letting his classmate get gored is actually a selfless act for the sake of his future relationship. Unaware that his comrade is actively rooting for his demise, Qin Muen stands his ground. He's done playing defensive. It's time to see who's really at the top of the food chain in this overgrown nightmare. The wild boar recovers from its temporary stupor and decides to double down on the aggression. With a heavy thump that vibrates through the damp earth, the beast charges forward. It's a literal wall of muscle and fur coming straight for Qin Muen, who is looking remarkably small compared to the oncoming disaster. Qin Muen's blue eyes narrow, focusing entirely on the charging beast. He's playing a dangerous game of chicken, telling himself to wait until the boar is just a little bit closer. It's the kind of high-stakes gambling where the house always wins, and the house is currently a 300-pound pig with knives for teeth. At the very last second, Qin Muen executes a perfect hop, launching himself into the air as the boar barrels underneath him. It's a move that would make a matador jealous, using the beast's own momentum against it while he positions himself for the killing blow. Mid-air and full of adrenaline, Qin Muen swings his weapon with everything he's got. He roars at the beast to take his strike, the bone blade whistling through the air as he aims for a weak spot. It's a do-or-die moment that will determine if he gets to see tomorrow or if he becomes the island's newest appetizer. Qin Muen lets out a fierce battle cry, his blade cutting through the air as the massive beast responds with a deafening roar. It's the classic hero versus nature moment, and honestly, the boar's vocal cords are putting in some serious overtime here. Agony rips through the wild boar, forcing a series of high-pitched squeals and guttural grunts from its throat. It thrashes wildly, the sound of its distress resonating through the dense foliage as it continues to roar in a mix of fury and pain. If there was an award for most dramatic animal performance, this bacon on the hoof would be sweeping the categories. Low growls vibrate from the boar's snout as it stabilizes, its single visible eye glowing with a menacing red light. Wisps of energy or steam trail from its socket, signaling that this oversized forest dweller is far from finished. It's giving off major final boss energy for something that's essentially just a very angry pig. Qin Muen alert, as ever, knows this fight isn't over just yet. Heavy footfalls vibrate the forest floor, the rhythmic thudding growing louder as the beast builds momentum as Qin Muen stands his ground. The boar lets out another thunderous roar, its hooves stomping against the dirt with enough force to shake the trees. Qin Muen isn't sticking around to be a pancake, though, sprinting toward a nearby trunk to use the environment to his advantage. It's a high-speed game of tag where the it has tusks and a serious attitude problem. Peering from behind a tree, Yan Min watches the chaos with wide, amber eyes, her face pale with terror. She screams Qin Muen's name, her hand clutching her chest as she witnesses the life-or-death struggle unfolding just meters away. It's the quintessential support moment, though shouting in a stealth situation is a bold tactical choice. Executing a perfect mid-air flip, Qin Muen grunts with the effort of his acrobatic escape. His feet find purchase against a tree trunk, the sound of his steps sharp against the bark as he maneuvers over the charging beast. It's a total flex of his agility, proving that he didn't skip gym class even in a survival scenario. Momentum proves to be the boar's undoing as it slams headfirst into the solid wood with a massive thud. The impact sends a shockwave through the clearing, likely leaving the beast with a world-class headache. Qin Muen watches from above, his descent timed perfectly to capitalize on the creature's momentary disorientation. Landing gracefully on the grass, Qin Muen acknowledges the situation with a calm very well, his eyes locked on his dazed target. The boar collapses against the tree with a heavy thud, its snout twitching while stars likely circle its head. Seizing the moment, Chin Muen drives his jagged blade deep into the boar's thick hide, a pained grunt escaping his lips from the exertion. Blood sprays from the fresh wound, staining the dark fur as the weapon bites deep. It's a messy business, but someone has to bring home the metaphorical bacon, and Chin Muen is clearly volunteering. Declaring that the time is now, Chin Muen follows up with a devastating slash across the beast's flank. He lets out a dismissive huff, his focus absolute as he carves through the opposition. The sheer speed of the strike leaves a trail of motion in the air, proving that he's not just lucky, he's actually quite the legend with a blade. High-pitched squeals erupt from the boar once more as blood fountains from a lethal-looking gash in its neck. The creature thrashes in a desperate attempt to escape the inevitable, its red eyes flickering with fading intensity. It's a grim sight, but in the world of survival, it's either the hunter or the very angry dinner. Surprise flashes across Chin Muen's face as the boar makes a final, desperate play, its jaws snapping shut with a sickening scrunch. The beast manages to catch his weapon in its teeth, forcing a sharp gasp of realization from the young man. Just when you think the fight is over, the pig decides to bite back. Grunting with effort, Chin Muen delivers a powerful kick to the boar's snout to break its grip, the impact forcing the beast's head back and creating the distance he needs to reset. It's a classic move executed with the kind of desperation that only comes from nearly losing a limb. Launching himself back into the air, Chin Muen shouts that he is coming for the final blow. He descends like a hawk, his body coiled for maximum impact as he targets the boar's exposed head. It's the iconic finishing leap, and if this doesn't end the fight, absolutely nothing will. Because the spot slightly above the center of its eyes is the wild boar's vital point. A precise hit there can end this nightmare in a single blow. Chin Muen is currently playing a high-stakes game of whack-a-mole, except the mole is a giant pig, and the stakes are his life. Despite the absolute beatdown, the beast refuses to clock out. Chin Muen clings to its back, wondering how on earth this thing still has so much strength left. The boar lets out a deafening roar, its massive body surging with a terrifying second wind that threatens to buck him off like a rag doll. Just when things look like a total wipe, the cavalry arrives in the form of Yan Min, Miss Sun, and Lee Smarty. Yan Min leads the charge through the dense foliage, screaming to Muen that they are finally here to help him. It's a classic power of friendship moment, though hopefully they brought more than just moral support. The squad actually puts in the work, dogpiling the beast to keep it grounded. Lee Smarty grunts that he has his side pinned down, putting his back into it while his glasses somehow stay on. Miss Sun struggles against the sheer mass of the creature, gasping at how incredibly strong it is. With the boar finally immobilized, Chin Muen goes full anime protagonist. His fists become a rhythmic machine of destruction, raining down a relentless barrage of punches onto the creature's skull. It's a level of aggression that would make a professional boxer take notes. The sound of the absolute demolition rings through the vibrant green canopy of the forest, signaling to every other creature in the woods that today is definitely not a good day to be a wild boar. Blood spatters across the grass as the assault finally reaches its crescendo. A blood-soaked fist rises and falls with a series of sharp ha grunts, each strike more desperate than the last. The once mighty beast is now just a punching bag for a very stressed-out young man. Silence returns to the clearing, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. Lee Smarty collapses nearby, huffing and puffing as he tries to reclaim his dignity. Yan Min sits on the forest floor, letting out exhausted ha sounds, while the massive boar lies motionless, sporting a very unfortunate lump on its head. To make sure the job is truly done, Chin Muen drives a jagged blade into the beast's skull with a sickening squirch. The boar lets out one final, pathetic roar as the weapon finds its mark, ending the struggle with a definitive, gory punctuation mark. Looking like he just finished a marathon through a blender, Chin Muen stares down at the carcass. Sweat beads on his forehead as he breathes out a sigh of relief, declaring that it is finally over. The adrenaline is fading, leaving behind nothing but pure exhaustion. Yanmin asks Muen if he is actually okay after that ordeal. He doesn't even look up, simply stating that he is fine, though his disheveled appearance suggests fine is a very generous interpretation of his current state. Yan Min isn't buying the tough guy act, urgently telling Muen that he needs to stop the bleeding quickly. She gestures toward the nasty gash on his chest, but Muen remains silent, offering nothing but silence as he stares off into the distance, probably wondering if this counts as extra credit. Suddenly, a wild Hu Qingfang appears, peeking from behind a tree with a smile that is way too bright for a murder scene. He praises his classmate Qin, calling him truly amazing for managing to kill such a massive boar. It's the kind of compliment that feels a bit late, considering he spent the fight as a spectator. Hu Qingfeng strolls into the clearing with all the confidence of a man who did absolutely nothing to help. He casually mentions that they can have meat tonight, punctuating the suggestion with a little ha-ha as if they weren't just seconds away from being turned into human kebabs. Qin Muen's patience for Hu Qingfeng's nonsense has officially hit zero. Without a word, he launches a brutal kick that sends the blonde-haired boy flying backward. Hu Qingfeng can only manage a pained ugh as he learns the hard way that Muen isn't in the mood for dinner plans or unearned banter. Hu Qingfeng is currently a human puddle, kneeling in the dirt with sweat beads the size of golf balls and a pathetic trail of drool for flair. He looks like he's failing a basic survival exam. Qin Muen stands over this mess, and Hu Qingfeng asks classmate Qin what on earth he thinks he's doing. It is the kind of question one asks when witnessing a total breakdown of dignity. Qin Muen isn't buying the waterworks or the amateur dramatics. His face remains a mask of cold realization as he cuts straight through the nonsense. He flatly accuses the blonde guy of wanting to kill him. There is no fluff or maybe you tripped excuse here. It is a straight-up call-out for attempted murder. Hu Qingfeng's eyes go wide, resembling a deer caught in high-definition headlights. He starts stuttering immediately, calling out to classmate Qin and asking what he's even talking about. He plays the "I'm just a confused little guy" card, claiming he doesn't understand a single word coming out of Qin Muen's mouth. It is a bold strategy for someone currently vibrating with guilt. A quick mental replay reveals the truth behind the so-called accident. In the middle of the chaotic forest, Hu Qingfeng is visible shoving Qin Muen from behind. It wasn't a gentle "excuse me" tap. It was a full-on go play with the giant pig launch. The betrayal is caught in 4K within Qin Muen's memory. Qin Muen offers nothing but a heavy, silence-filled stare. His expression suggests he is currently calculating exactly how many ways he can make this guy regret his life choices. Sometimes, saying absolutely nothing says everything, especially when staring down the person who tried to use you as boar bait. Hu Qingfeng lets out a quiet humph, his internal ego likely feeling way more confident than his trembling knees. He quickly pivots back to his innocent victim routine, looking up from the ground with a face full of manufactured sincerity. He tells classmate Qin that he's totally mistaken and insists that he truly didn't mean to kill him. It is the classic "it was just a prank, bro" defense. Clutching his floral shirt like he's the one who's been wronged, Hu Qingfeng keeps the excuses flowing. He claims he just panicked and wanted to warn everyone to run for their lives. According to his logic, he simply didn't control his strength well and accidentally bumped Qin Muen toward the wild boar. It is a masterpiece of gaslighting that deserves a standing ovation for audacity. Suddenly, Qin Muen's weapon clatters onto the grass right in front of Hu Qingfeng's knees. The sudden appearance of a sharp object usually isn't a sign that the conversation is heading toward a peaceful resolution or a group hug. Qin Muen stands tall, his black shirt bearing the literal scars of the battle Hu Qingfeng forced him into. He looks down with the cold indifference of a final boss. He acknowledges the situation, noting that since Hu Qingfeng was so keen on the idea of killing him, things are about to get interesting. Qin Muen decides to be generous in the worst way possible. He tells Hu Qingfeng that he's going to give him that chance to kill him right now. It is the ultimate keep that same energy moment, and Hu Qingfeng looks like he'd rather be. Yan Min is absolutely losing it. She points a finger with peak indignation, screaming at Hu Qingfeng to never forget that Muen was the one who saved his life. She demands to know how he has the audacity to repay such kindness with the absolute nonsense he is pulling right now. Her pink hair practically vibrates with the sheer force of her anger as she lays into him. Down on his knees in the dirt, Hu Qingfeng looks like a wet paper bag of a man. He whimpers out a pathetic excuse, claiming he really didn't mean to harm classmate Qin. It is a classic "it was just a prank" defense. But nobody is buying what he is selling. Qin Muen stands tall with his back turned, radiating main character energy while Lee Smarty and the others watch this dumpster fire of an apology unfold in the middle of the woods. Qin Muen isn't here for the tears or the excuses. He turns around, looking entirely too calm for someone dealing with a traitor. Since Hu Qingfeng is apparently too much of a coward to pull the knife out, Muen decides he will just handle the DIY surgery himself. He reaches down with a steady hand, ready to reclaim his personal space from the jagged blade currently occupying it. Hu Qingfeng's eyes go wide enough to swallow his face because he clearly didn't expect the guy he stabbed to be such a legend. Sweat beads on his forehead as the realization hits that he is trapped in a forest with a guy who treats a knife wound like a minor inconvenience. Suddenly, the coward finds some misplaced courage. With a sharp hup, Hu Qingfeng lunges forward. He isn't trying to help, he is doubling down on the betrayal. The jagged, bone-like blade glints as he thrusts it toward Muen's reaching hand. It is a desperate, messy move from a guy who knows he is already cooked. Hu Qingfeng's face twists into a mask of pure, panic-fueled rage. He grips the hilt of that ugly bone knife with both hands, putting every ounce of his pathetic weight into the strike, proving that some people really do not know when to quit while they are behind. Qin Muen stands there like a brick wall, completely unfazed by the frantic movement in front of him. He lets out a silent beat of judgment of pure, really energy. Hu Qingfeng, on the other hand, is busy screaming his lungs out with a loud as he loses his footing. The contrast between the cool-headed protagonist and the screeching mess on the floor is an absolute iconic moment. Hu Qingfeng's swings hard with full confidence, and then Qin Muen's leg comes out of nowhere and sends the whole attack sideways, leaving this dude completely lost and wide open. The confusion on his face is doing more damage than the kick. Qin Muen stomps down on the weapon hand, and the blade goes flying. The weapon is gone, and so is any advantage this guy thought he had. Qin Muen decides the playtime is over and exerts his dominance over the situation. He catches Hu Qingfeng in a grapple that looks less like a fight and more like a professional athlete handling a toddler. Hu Qingfeng is officially airborne. He lets out a guttural scream as he is launched backward with the force of a cannonball. His arms and legs are splayed out in a total starfish pose, proving that gravity is a harsh mistress when the protagonist decides he has had enough of your attitude. The impact is going to be absolutely legendary. The tree wins the collision. Hu Qingfeng slumps against the bark, clutching his stomach and letting out a series of painful sounds. He looks like he is regretting every life choice that led him to this specific forest on this specific day. His floral shirt is a mess, and his dignity is officially non-existent. The situation takes a dark turn as the jagged blade finally finds a home right in Hu Qingfeng's own shoulder. He stares down at the weapon he brought to the fight, looking absolutely stunned that his own treachery literally came back to bite him. The shock wears off and the actual pain sets in. Hu Qingfeng opens his mouth wide, letting out a jagged scream that probably echoes through the entire forest. He is clutching at his chest, the bone knife buried deep near his collarbone. Miss Sun rushes forward, her hands hovering near her chest in a classic "please don't kill him" gesture. She begs Muen to wait, trying to play the voice of reason by suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the guy who just tried to shank him didn't actually mean it. Behind her, Yan Min and Lee Smarty look on, probably wondering if they should call a doctor or just let the karma finish its work. Miss Sun is currently in full peace and love mode, pleading with Qin Muen to please spare the traitor. She points out that they are all just students from the same school, and having a dead body to explain back home would be a total logistical nightmare for everyone involved. Muen isn't exactly buying the school spirit argument. Looming over a terrified Hu Qingfeng with a massive serrated blade, he notes that if he actually wanted to commit a murder, the situation would look much different. The blonde-haired boy trembles against a tree, sweat beading on his forehead as the sharp metal hangs inches from his face. The strike wouldn't have just landed on a shoulder if Muen were serious about ending a life. Blood sprays into the air as the reality of the threat lands, forcing a pathetic scream out of Hu Qingfeng. The serrated edge of the blade catches the light, emphasizing just how close the coward came to a permanent retirement. Standing over his trembling classmate, Muen delivers his one and only warning. Hu Qingfeng, now desperately calling him classmate Qin, tries to claim he didn't mean it, which is a pretty bold lie for someone who just tried to stab a guy in the back. The blonde boy cowers, his yellowish floral shirt now stained with his own blood. Walking away, Muen makes his stance clear. If there is a next time, he isn't wasting words. He's just going to finish the job. Yan Min spots a jagged tear in Muen's black t-shirt and starts stressing about the nasty wound hidden underneath. She points frantically, insisting it needs immediate treatment, but Muen brushes her off. He decides they can deal with the injury once they reach the beach, prioritizing movement over first aid. Looking at the massive boar, Muen points out that the smell of blood is basically a dinner bell for more beasts. He orders the group to find some strong vines so they can drag the prize back to the beach and handle it there. The group stands over the dark-furred beast, realizing the clock is ticking before more predators arrive. Lee Smarty adjusts his glasses and agrees to the plan. Internally, he's doing some quick math, deciding that while a teammate who stabs people in the back is a total cancer to the group, Muen is a decisive, ruthless legend with formidable combat skills. He recognizes that Muen is the only reason they aren't all boar food right now. The manual labor begins in earnest. Hands grip the thick green vines as the group starts the heavy lifting with a rhythmic chant of hey and ho. The strain is visible as they begin the long trek through the dense foliage, hauling the massive weight of the wild boar behind them. It's a classic team-building exercise, except with more dead animals and less HR supervision. While the main trio of Muen, Lee Smarty, and Yan Min hauls the boar, Miss Sun helps a limping Hu Qingfeng keep up with the pace. The rhythmic hey and ho continues as they carve a path through the dirt. Finally reaching the shoreline, Yan Min collapses onto the sand with a sigh of relief, celebrating that they are finally out of the woods. The bright sun hits the beach as she catches her breath. Some observers might be distracted by the view, a total gyat moment, but the focus remains on Muen's impressive physique as he stands over the group. Sudden pain clouds Muen's expression. Confusion strikes as his head throbs, forcing him to question what is happening to his body. Red static fills his vision, and he reaches up to clutch his temple, his steady composure finally beginning to crack under the strain of an internal assault. Gravity wins as Muen's knees buckle. A sharp shock rings out as he falls backward toward the sand. Yan Min shrieks his name in a total panic, her relief instantly replaced by terror as the group's strongest member suddenly topples like a cut tree. Lee Smarty rushes to support him, noting that Muen's skin is radiating heat. He shouts that the guy has a fever, which is definitely a plot twist nobody wanted for their beach day. Muen lies unconscious, his face pale and covered in a cold sweat as the group huddles around him. Peeling back the torn fabric of his shirt reveals the source of the trouble. A horrified gasp follows the sight of the wound, which is looking absolutely iconic in all the wrong ways. The injury on Muen's chest is angry and inflamed, suggesting that the wild boar's tusks left behind more than just a simple scratch. Miss Sun and Yan Min hover over the fallen hero, and the vibes are officially chaotic. Panicking at the sight of the unconscious man, Miss Sun shrieks to know what happened to him. Yan Min, playing the role of the reluctant medic, points out that the wound is already looking nasty and infected. It is not a great look for Chin Muen, who is currently doing a very convincing impression of a decorative rug on the sand. Lee Smarty, the man with the glasses and the most intense textbook energy, starts spiraling into a medical monologue. He realizes that inflammation is basically a death sentence without proper treatment. He does the math on the wild boar's tusks, calculating that there are probably hundreds of different kinds of bacteria currently throwing a party in Muen's bloodstream. It is a real mood killer for the group's survival hopes. He concludes that a cut from a wild boar's tusk is basically a biological weapon. If the area isn't disinfected, even a tiny scratch can lead to a fatal infection. Yan Min leans in close to Muen's face, checking to see if there is anyone still home behind those heavy eyelids. She asks if he is still conscious, stressing that they need to disinfect his wounds immediately. Her panic reaches peak levels because sepsis definitely wasn't on the itinerary for this island getaway. Muen, ever the stoic martyr, mutters that he is just going to sleep for a bit and promises he will be better soon after. It is the classic tough guy move to say he's fine while literally fading out. Yan Min isn't buying the act, pointing out the obvious flaw in the plan because they are stuck in a total mess with absolutely nothing to use for disinfection. Refusing to let him nap his way into the afterlife, Yan Min insists they cannot just ignore this. She warns him that if the wound gets infected, he is looking at a one-way ticket to Tetanus Town. She is practically vibrating with stress, which is fair considering their medical kit consists of exactly 0 items and a lot of bad luck. Lee Smarty helps prop up the unconscious hero, adding his own cheerful contribution to the grim conversation. He notes that once a person actually gets tetanus, it can be fatal. From the depths of his fever, Muen tries to play it cool one last time. He tells them not to worry and insists he will be okay. It is a bold claim for a guy who cannot even keep his eyes open, but the commitment to the "it's just a flesh wound" bit is almost iconic. Yan Min keeps calling out his name, desperate to keep him from drifting off into a permanent slumber. Lee Smarty checks the vitals and confirms the bad news. Muen is running a fever. He doubles down on the need to disinfect the wound immediately because apparently saying it 3 times might make a bottle of rubbing alcohol manifest out of thin air. Yan Min hits him with the ultimate reality check, asking what they are supposed to use when they do not even have clean water. Lee Smarty just stares back with a silence that is loud enough to hear. The ellipsis in his thoughts does a lot of heavy lifting for his total lack of a backup plan. Instead of solving the medical crisis, Lee Smarty decides now is the perfect time for some island gossip. He asks if classmate Yang and classmate Chin are actually a couple. Priorities, Lee. The man is dying, and he is out here trying to confirm his ship. It is absolute legend behavior in the middle of a tragedy. Yeonmin is visibly confused by the sudden pivot to her love life, her face turning a shade of pink that matches her hair. Lee Smarty clears his throat, getting back on track by mentioning there is a folk remedy for disinfecting, though he seems a little hesitant to drop the knowledge. Yeonmin's eyes light up with hope, her face practically sparkling as she thinks they have found a loophole in their survival situation. She eagerly asks what this mysterious remedy is, probably expecting some rare medicinal herb or a magical spring hidden in the jungle. The vibe shifts instantly as Lee Smarty delivers the punchline. They have to use urine. Meanwhile, Lee sits there on the beach holding a bowl, ready to make things very awkward for everyone involved. Suddenly, the scene shifts to a classroom setting with a chibi nurse Yeonmin standing in front of a chalkboard. A caption for the mini-class explains that in certain extreme circumstances, untreated wounds are highly likely to breed a massive number of germs. Chibi Yeonmin cheers that the mini lesson is starting now, because nothing says survival horror like a cute educational segment. Yeonmin pivots into a full-blown medical tutorial, rocking a nurse's cap like she's about to drop the most cursed life hack in history. She clarifies that when life gives you lemons, or in this case a total lack of antiseptic, midstream urine is the go-to solution for cleaning a nasty wound. To make sure everyone follows along, a handy visual aid pops up, neatly labeling the beginning, middle, and end of the stream. It's the kind of educational content nobody asked for, but everyone is now forced to witness. Reality hits like a freight train as Yeonmin bellows a frantic shout for everyone to stop. Instead of a controlled medical procedure, a disinfection advice way too literally, aiming its stream directly onto Chin Muen's chest. Muen lies there motionless, looking like his soul is ready to check out of this island resort permanently. A helpful, if slightly late, disclaimer pops up to remind everyone that keeping wounds dry is actually the goal to prevent infection, and maybe, just maybe, a real hospital would be better than a wild animal's bladder.